Good evening. I'm thrilled to be here with all of you for AJC's signature Global Forum session, The Great Debate. As we sit here together in Tel Aviv, 1,500 strong from 60 nations around the world, celebrating the 75th anniversary of Israel's birth, our topic could not be more relevant. Our panelists will be debating the question, should diaspora Jews have a say in Israeli affairs? The debate's central question asks us to consider what place diaspora Jews hold in the state of Israel, what role Israel plays for the Jewish people as a whole, and how Israeli and diaspora Jews see one another. These are enormous issues, not easily addressed with pithy catchphrases or simple rules of engagement. But we who care passionately about the Jewish people cannot shy away from them. If the Jewish diaspora and Israel are to remain strongly connected and staunchly committed to a unified Jewish future, it is incumbent upon us to face these issues head-on, debate them, and discuss them, even if, in fact, especially if, we don't always agree. And the time is now. In this moment of intense discord in Israeli society, these questions have become more contested than ever before. At this time, please join me in welcoming our esteemed panelists, each one a highly respected thinker about the Israel-diaspora relationship. Dr. Yehuda Kurtzer, president of the Shalom Hartman Institute of North America, and Ariel Kahana, senior diplomatic commentator for Israel Hayom, to the stage. Welcome, Yehuda and Ariel. Before we begin, I just wanted to take a moment to unpack our debate question. First, what does it mean when we ask if diaspora Jews should have a say in Israeli affairs? Of course, diaspora Jews are entitled to voice any opinion they want about Israeli affairs. But should Israel, the Jewish homeland, be obligated to listen to those opinions and incorporate them into its thinking? Second, although we use the collective term diaspora Jews in our debate question, this evening we're going to be focusing primarily on the American Jewish community. The question of how different diaspora Jewish communities should interact with Israel is deeply informed by the unique circumstances of each community. American Jewry is by far the largest diaspora community, representing approximately 80% of the Jewish diaspora. And American Jewry's connection to the state of Israel has always been intertwined with its advocacy for Israel with its own government, Israel's most important ally. Indeed, AJC leaders across the United States, through our 25 regional offices, advocate passionately for Israel each and every day. American Jewry's large size and unique role in advocating for Israel impact the way both Israeli and American Jews see the relationship between these two largest Jewish communities on earth. So, as not to flatten the richly diverse Jewish diaspora by lumping all its unique communities together, we've chosen to primarily focus on the relationship between the American Jewish community and Israel. With those caveats, let's get to our debate. We will begin our debate by asking each speaker to offer an opening statement of up to 2 minutes, and you see we have a clock. And we will then allow up to 2 minutes of rebuttals, after which I will pose a series of questions to the debaters, who will each have up to 2 minutes to respond. We will conclude with a 1-minute summation by each debater. We conducted a coin toss backstage to determine which of our speakers will begin, and we will begin with Ariel. Ariel, bevakasha.
Toda raba. Shalom everyone, good evening AJC. It's not only a great honor to be at this stage, it's also very moving, the speeches we just heard from Kosovo to Northwest University. Sometimes here in Israel, we intend to forget the support we have or we get from the world. We are usually focused on our internal issues. So for me as an Israeli, it's always heartwarming, I would say, to hear just what happened here in the last hour. And also, mainly on times of disagreements, of dispute, I think it's most important to keep talking one with each other, especially a time of disagreements as we had here in Israel, or the issue we will just going to discuss. And finally, someone told me that Yehuda and I look a little bit similar, so I'm not sure if we really look like one each other, but what I am sure is that Yehuda and I and all of us in this room are one big family. The floor is yours.
So my short answer to this question, should diaspora Jews have a say in Israeli affairs, is hell yes. Diaspora Jews should have a say in Israeli affairs. But the longer answer, one that merits maybe 2 minutes, is this. Of the many miracles brought about with the founding of the State of Israel, the one I want to focus on that we don't actually see as much because we have lived through it in the ways that we have is the transformed nature of Jewish peoplehood itself. You see, prior to the creation of the State of Israel and for most of the last 2,000 years of Jewish history, Jewish peoplehood was a construct. Jews believed in the idea of Jewish peoplehood, but didn't actually have a lot to do with one another, much less have much to say to one another. So while I'm sure 18th century Jews in Warsaw probably would have had opinions about 18th century Jews in Tunis, the capacity for them to communicate with one another was non-existent. And so we believed in some notion of the Jewish people, but had no mechanism or tools to build relationships across all of these differences. We might have cared about one another, but very little investment in what the other was doing. The combination of the tragedies of the 20th century, as well as the creation of the State of Israel, gave the Jewish people a different meaning, a collective project to build the national homeland of the Jewish people. And that project took a lot from all of us, whether or not we decided to actually move here and become citizens, and the Zionism still remains at the heart of Jewish peoplehood today. Its successes make us proud as American Jews, and its failures embarrass us as American Jews. And I would suggest that making Israel one of the central projects of Jewish peoplehood was not just a story of the 20th century, but needs to be a story of the 21st. And that motivates my insistence of why diaspora Jews have the right and need to weigh in on Israeli matters and to all Israeli matters, and that the attempts to control that are not only misguided, but are actually attacks on Jewish peoplehood itself.
So, first of all, talking about history, as far as I know, Jewish communities during history definitely had ties one with each other, including rabbis or community leaders who were sending letters one to each other to discuss issues in halakha or in other topics. So one of the unique sides of Judaism all over those 2,000 years is being all around the world, but still being one nation. In any case, this period of history that we have the State of Israel is in no way to compare to the former part of history when actually we were in exile. Israel, I believe everyone will agree with me about it, Israel is the center of the Jewish people, of Judaism in this period. Of course, we respect and we love and we want to be in touch with Jews all around the world. But the center is here.
So
that's my reply.
It's exactly that transformation. Something is different from a previous era than it is now. And even if you claim that the center of Jewish life is here, and the main questions that the Jewish people are litigating on a global stage around democracy and power and the meaning of Jewishness in the world, if you believe that to be the case, then it actually obligates world Jewry to be engaged deeply in what we think Israel is doing well and supporting it from afar, and engaged equally in helping Israel to see the things that we as diaspora Jews can uniquely see and bring from the power of our Jewish tradition. Because this is ultimately the main change that Zionism should bring about to the Jewish people, which is, if we are actually a different Jewish people today, it's time for the Jewish people to grow up. Israelis are not going to wither under the criticism or the involvement of American Jews. Israelis are powerful and resilient. This project of the State of Israel is not so fragile that the commentary, the criticism, and the involvement of Jews who care about this place is actually going to weaken it. And ultimately, if we believe in this notion that the Jewish people are responsible for one another, responsibility is not cheerleading. Responsibility is the obligation to say, I can see something you can't see. I might be able to help you on the things that you might not be able to deal with on your own, and to understand that there's a companion relationship between support and criticism as fundamental commitments of the Jewish people.
I would say that to tell me that from far America, you see things that going on here better than we Israelis see, it's kind of, I would say, patronalize. That's the word. You should give Israelis, I would say, the respect to make their own decisions. And you have to respect the different way we see the issues. After all, we live here. You know, I have a hobby when I go to America. I'm a reporter, so I see the news. Same America, same news. I open CNN and I open Fox News. As if completely two realities on the same facts, in the same state. What is my lesson from that? It's not to be pro-Biden or pro-Trump. It's to know that for me, as someone who is coming from far away, I don't know. And I should respect the decisions of the country I'm visiting. Same applies for here. Israelis has their own judgment, has their own democracy tools, has their own experience, and are located in the other side of the world. Give us a little bit credit, we know what we do.
So first of all,
You're not even going to let me get to the questions, are you?
One more.
All right, fine. One more, Yehuda, one more.
You know, a number of years ago at a Hartman philosophy conference, the late Professor Sidney Morgenbesser was weighing in on something that he thought Israelis should, some topic of concern about Israeli politics. And one of his Israeli colleagues said to him, "Are you telling us, you, American Jew, are you telling us what to do?" And he responded by saying, "Oh, you misunderstand me. I'm not telling you what to do. I'm telling you what I think." That's a big difference. The Jewish people actually have tools, resilient tools of learning from one another, of arguing and debating with one another. So no, I as an American Jew am not coming here and saying, I understand this country better than its voting citizens. I am not trying to get in the way of a process that is already there. But just as one example, the community of the Jewish people around the world with the longest continuity of thriving as a Jewish community under the conditions of democracy are American Jews. Is there something that we have figured out about democracy and liberalism that might be useful? So if the obstacle becomes, you don't live here and you can't weigh in, imagine that the Jewish people in the State of Israel are actually subtracting from ourselves the wisdom of Jewish peoplehood as can be sourced around the world. Why would we do that?
All right, so first of all, I'm here because I want to hear your views.
I'm telling you, I'm not going to get to ask a single question here. All right.
I do.
One second. I'm giving you 1 minute and you 1 minute, and then we're going to questions.
Yeah. We'll try. We're making this debate because as an Israeli, I do want to hear what you have to say or the people here have to say, definitely. But all in all, the decisions regarding Israel has to be made here. Now, look, I don't want to speak negatively, of course, about history of Jewish America. We just heard a painful Asian challenge we were all going through, but unfortunately in last years, Jewish American, especially youngest, but not only, are suffering more. I'm talking about the anti-Semitism. So, of course, I'm very happy, of course, of the success of American Jews and the help American Jews gave and is giving to Israel. But all in all, to say that is an example of success to Israel, it's not the case.
I would never make a claim that everything about the American Jewish community is thriving. I've chosen to build my life and my career in support of the North American Jewish community to help the American Jewish community struggle with its challenges. So it's not the patronizing language of we've figured everything out there that is going to be equally applicable here. I know that. Nor would I claim that American Jews should circumvent the democratic process by which the citizens of the State of Israel ultimately have to make their decision. The question here is a question of should. What should the Jewish people be like? And it would be tragic to me to say, at a moment when we have rehabilitated the whole idea of Jewish peoplehood and the capacity of our people to thrive in different parts of the world at the same time, under the two best sets of conditions that the Jewish people have ever had, that we would deprive ourselves of the wisdom and the opportunity to take advantage of that moment.
Since
Okay.
I can't answer,
Hold on a second.
I'm noting.
Take notes, yeah.
Please.
I want to actually take a step back and take a 30,000-foot view for a moment. I'm going to give you a sentence we hear in the Jewish world all the time. And we say it, and I don't think we really think about what it means. Israel is the homeland of the Jewish people. What does that statement mean to you? What's a homeland? Does Israel belong to diaspora Jews the same way it belongs to Israeli Jews? So I think, Ariel, we're up to you. Yeah? We'll start with you, and then Yehuda. Go ahead.
So Israel as a Jewish state means for me a place, of course, that all Jews has part in it. It means that every Jew and even a child or grandchild of Jews can come here and become an Israeli citizen the way he landed in Ben Gurion. And the same moment he get all rights and all duties like an Israeli who is living here for decades. It means that we, Israelis and the state of Israel has an obligation to diaspora Jews all around the world, whether it's keeping ties with the diaspora and whether it is security challenges, which unfortunately Jews all around the world are suffering from. And last, a Jewish state means for me being the center of the Jewish peoplehood, not only now, but also for future. And that goes to a point, Yehuda, you mentioned before, the guarantee for the Jewish peoplehood, the Jewish people to continue is definitely a joint effort by all of us. But the main part of this effort is the state of Israel. This is the center of Jewish life. Again, I respect a lot Jewish America, and I'm keep learning about the part you have and you had and you will have. But Israel is the center. Last point, time is short. Last point, you, of course, as I said, you have all rights to talk. But when you talk as America, a Jewish leader, when you speak, you know it affects everyone around, and therefore, non-Jewish population. Therefore, there should be a responsibility. If you want to speak, speak. But do it in a careful way and in a responsible way, because it influences what goes on in America or here in Israel.
So going back to your, So Laura, going back to your original question, when I think about this idea of the homeland of the Jewish people or the national home of the Jewish people, I'm reminded of one of the difficulties that I struggle with, even with my own viewpoint about diaspora Jews having a say here.
I will step aside and...
I can just take both sides here. Which is actually, the state of Israel has a built-in paradox that's in the source, in the Declaration of Independence, and has been working itself out since, which is the claim that it is both the nation-state of the Jewish people, which obviously recent Israeli governments have been trying to entrench through legislation, and also it strives to be a state for all of its citizens. So it worries me a little bit that as diaspora Jews, we sometimes leapfrog, for instance, Palestinians as citizens of Israel, Palestinians under occupation, who are part of that state of all of its citizens or all of its inhabitants. I worry about that. Are we entering into a place that's uncomfortable? But then I remember that whole notion of a nation state of a Jewish people. I look at the history of what American Jews and other diaspora Jewish communities were capable of doing here. I look at all of the ways that the rights and responsibilities of and to diaspora Jews are baked into this country from the law of return and elsewhere. And it starts to become something where you say, I know this is hard. I know it's complicated to navigate, that the State of Israel is both the national homeland of the Jewish people, and that Jewish communities can and should thrive in diaspora, and there are non-Jews who live here who deserve equal rights as well. And I don't want to just look at something difficult and say, well, that looks too dicey to navigate. I guess we should leave Israel to the Israelis. And part of me says, and I mean this not in a patronizing way, I mean this in a loving way, the State of Israel is too important to the Jewish people to leave to Israelis alone.
Okay, so we're going to get in.
Can I reply?
What tiny reply?
Tiny
Go.
reply. No one promised us it's going to be an easy journey. Of course, we have a lot of difficulties, a lot of challenges, and like Golda Meir once said, we have no option not to be optimistic. Yes, we have to fight and do it together.
And this is my way of saying to you, as a diaspora Jew, this is how I show my support. I'm here.
Fine.
Wow.
By the way,
Okay.
now, seriously, it's easy. I mean, of course, by the way, I'm excited, of course, that this conference takes place here and not in Washington like you do most of the years, right? That for itself is a message, a good one.
So I'm going to get a little bit more down to brass tacks for a minute. It seems like you both agree, at least to some extent, although you certainly differ, that diaspora Jews should have the right to weigh in on Israeli affairs in some fashion. Here's what I want to ask you. Should they be able to weigh in on any subject at all? And is everything on the table? You mentioned, Ariel, about the responsibility that American Jews might hold when they speak. So I want you to think about that as well. What are the subjects that American Jews should be weighing in on? Is it all? Is it some? For example, is it religious pluralism in Israel? Is it judicial reform? Is it the Israeli-Palestinian conflict? Thoughts? We'll start with you, Yehuda.
It's all the above. I mean, if we're being serious about building a relationship between American Jews and Israeli Jews, the notion that we would, at the outset of that relationship, set up boundaries of what things American Jews can have opinions on and what we can't is not actually a relationship, it's just tools for control. It's not working in the American Jewish community to tell the vast majority of the emerging generation of American Jews who have complicated, sometimes and ambivalent feelings about Israel, that they're allowed to see what they see, but not allowed to say anything about it. It hampers our ability to do serious education in the American Jewish community when people feel that there are perceived or actual barriers and boundaries about the things that people are supposed to have an opinion about. But worst of all, it doesn't take seriously that all of the issues that Israel faces around democracy and occupation and judicial reform, those are the issues where there are major stakes for the future and success of this project that we as American Jews want to be engaged with and involved with and ultimately want to support. When we are told by Israeli Jews that the only areas where we can have opinions are around issues of religion, what's patronizing about that is that it says to American Jews, you are basically only Jews through a particular prism of religious life and practice. You are only serious players here to the extent that your issues involve something like the Kotel legislation. But we are a complicated people wherever we happen to live. And those issues that define the success, the present, and the future of the State of Israel require the collective wisdom and perhaps even the collective support of global Jewry to weigh in on. And I want us to resist as hard as we can, and as uncomfortable as it is, that when you actually advocate for a position like this, you will put stuff into the atmosphere around criticism of Israel in the public square that makes certain people uncomfortable. But that's part of the success of Zionism. The success of Zionism is that the Jewish people are living out our questions and our story on the world stage in a way that's never been before, and it's time to stop shtetlizing that. Making it as though we are only a set of Jews who can speak internally to one another and can't talk about it in public.
You might say you don't want to shtetlize, that was the word?
Yeah, I made that up.
All right, sure. The problem is that those who challenge us still do it. That's the problem we have. Our outside challenges are much bigger and much more danger than all the differences we have in between us. Now, to me, again, I want to hear diaspora Jews. I want this conversation to go on. But again, responsibility is necessary. And secondly, decisions are made here through a democratic process. I may like it, I may not like it. You can imagine that some of the decisions made by some Israeli governments during the years I didn't like, but that's democracy, that's the way it works here. And we all have to respect it. And naturally, those who are living here, who are citizens, who are part of the democratic process, have more power than those who unfortunately love us and support us, but don't live here. I see no other way how it can work unless being here and being a citizen. Now, of course, issues are related to diaspora daily life. I definitely get that we have, I would say, to take in account more voices that are coming from the diaspora. It's another question, who is exactly the diaspora? I mean, you, of course, you support and you talk, etc. But you have about 8 million Jews that 80% of them are not involved at all in Jewish issues or Israeli issues. So I don't want to ask who do you represent because that's too it's too sharp. But it's a question. I mean, why should Israeli Prime Minister change a policy which majority of Israelis wants because someone who is not a citizen asked him to do it? Now, again, I'm telling you, we do have to consider, definitely in issues, you mentioned the Kotel or Giyur, conversion, and so on, we have to be very sensitive for that. And I'll give you an example. By the way, it takes place, it happens. This government, I don't know if you know, this government wanted to change the law of return. And it was not changed, and it will not be changed, although there is majority in the Knesset. The reason for that is a request coming from American Jewish leadership.
Okay.
So not only we take it in account, we even change policy, but all in all, democracy processes are taking place here, and I see no better. Do you want it not to be a democratic process?
Laura?
Yehuda, I'm going to give you some time to respond.
Of course I want it to be a democratic process, but let me give you the example that you talked about, that you mentioned earlier. When the State of Israel is engaging in a policy question, should the views of how a particular public policy implicates diaspora Jewry factor into the Prime Minister's decision, even if at the present moment the Israeli electorate doesn't support that decision? 100%. Because here we have different responsibilities. You say to me, I don't know who you represent because the vast majority of American Jews are disconnected from Israel. That is true. I think it's a problem, and that's my life's work. And I want to turn back to Israelis and say the fact that the majority of Israeli Jews don't want to hear the opinion of American Jews, that is your problem, and it needs to be your work. Because that's the responsibility of Jewish peoplehood.
First of all, it's not true at all. I mean, diaspora Jews definitely get a lot of attention and voice here in Israel. But before I'll explore that, and I will, you mentioned a very important point. Our main challenge here in Israel, and I think yours in America, is a majority of Jews, or American Jews, or Israeli Jews, who are not involved enough. Israeli Jews, the diaspora is not important enough for them. It's our Israelis' responsibility to strengthen the ties from here. But at the same time, the main goal both of us have is American Jews who are unaffiliated in no aspect. Now, I want to tell you, contrary to what you say about whether Israel leadership is listening or not, a lot of groups, lobbies, organizations, Israeli, would love to have the power and the attention that America, diaspora, or actually diaspora leadership in general, is getting here in Israel. You just now had a former defense minister. You had here in this conference, you had the president. You had the prime minister. Every time leadership coming, American leadership, diaspora leadership comes to Israel, they get a meeting with the prime minister, or with the president, or with ministers. Do you think that every time the I don't know, Israeli agriculture organization wants to meet Netanyahu, they get a meeting? Oh no. So you get, and by the way, when Israeli leaders are going to America, they always meet with diaspora, whether it's AJC, APAC, Conference of Presidents, federations, and so many other organizations. So you do have a voice. People are definitely in the leadership, are taking you very seriously. The state of Israel is putting, I don't know if you know, about 1 billion shekels every year for more ties between Israel and diaspora Jews, Israeli taxpayers. Okay, you have the diaspora ministry going to the Jewish agency, and so many plans, and so many visits and delegation. Is it enough? No, it's not. For me, as someone who wants this connection to be strong, it's never enough. But there is a lot of listening, and there's definitely a big effort. It should always be more.
Can I ask you a follow-up question, Ariel? And then Yehuda, to you as well. Where should American Jews not have a voice? Where should American Jews keep their mouths shut? In your opinion.
Yep.
And then I'll ask Yehuda. I think I know Yehuda's answer.
Okay. So as someone who, freedom of speech, I'm a reporter, so freedom of speech is so basic for me, I would never tell anyone to shut up. But to be... Was that a joke? I don't know. I was very serious. But naturally, when it comes to issues of life and death, national security issues for Israel, and that's, 80% of our energy goes there. Naturally, I think the legitimacy of non-Israelis to get involved, I would say, is much more limited. Was that a fair answer?
Give me specifics.
Iran?
What about judicial reform?
Judicial reform, okay. What I meant was Iran. I said national security.
Seconds.
I said Iran, I mean Palestinian issue, Arab countries, etc., etc. But judicial reform is, first of all, an internal issue here in Israel, almost technical issue. It's a question how to run Israeli democracy. That was a debate. Actually, it's still going on, although in much lower level. And I think it goes towards the example I said before. You have to live here, know the issue very well, and then make an opinion. From my experience, from the other side of the world, you don't always get it right.
Yehuda.
So I want to say two things about this. The first, as I'll reiterate what I've said, I just don't buy that distinction, because to parcel off the things that are actually polarizing this society and saying to American Jews that their opinions, even when they're in support of positions that are already held by Israelis, should not be able to weigh in on those discussions doesn't make a lot of sense. I've said a lot of times before, and I'll repeat here, the band of legitimate viewpoints in the American Jewish community about Israel is far narrower than the viewpoints that can be expressed in the Israeli Knesset. That's a mistake for us. It means that when we talk about being pro-Israel,
you probably don't watch Knesset discussions. You can say everything in Israel Knesset.
That's my point. That's my point. I want the American Jewish community to manifest the diversity of opinion.
So once you do that, you have Rashida Tlaib. That's where you want to go?
I don't think that that's the cause of why there's anti-Israel sentiment in America.
That's how it goes.
Absolutely not. I think if we want to be able to weigh in, if those of us who don't agree with...
Yehuda.
One second.
Wait, Ariel, 1 second.
If those of us who don't agree with Congresswoman Tlaib's positions about Israel are handcuffing ourselves to not be able to hold on to positions that are credibly part of the center and center-left of Israeli society because of the rules that are put in place by the American Jewish community and by Israelis, we are actually weakening our hand and weakening our capacity to engage with those who disagree with us in America. And even before we talk about these as Jewish issues, I am also a taxpayer and citizen of the United States of America, where there are a whole set of issues about Israel's future, its policies, its economic policies, its foreign policies, that I have to care about as an American. And therefore, sometimes those line up exactly and overlappingly with the majority of Israelis, and sometimes they don't. And it's part of my responsibility to be, you're right, 100% you are right that we have to be knowledgeable. And again, our work, mine at the Hartman Institute and AJC's, a lot of that is about educating American Jews to be much more knowledgeable about things that we want to have opinions about. But once I've learned that, and I have earned that, it is bad for me as a Jew and bad for me as an American to handcuff myself and say, on this, I don't get to have an opinion.
Okay, Ariel, I'm going to let you.
Look,
Ariel, I'm going to let you respond, and then we're going to go to our last question.
First of all, it's challenging. For all of us, challenging, right? Let's take an example. Some of the population here is not going to the army. Do I like it? No. Would I protect it when I go outside? Yes, I do. Okay, it's challenging. Life we all know is not black and white. Now, I understand the complexity. You mentioned you are American citizen, and maybe the wish to be so strong, or have strong opinions at the same time about both countries is not so much possible. In a way, you are right. As long as you are an American citizen, fair enough, you should vote and make decisions and opinions regarding, if you want, of course, to what is good or bad for America. For me as an Israeli Jew, by the way, it's quite disappointing that Israel is not actually a priority for most of American Jews when they come to vote. But I get that. I respect it. But again, you live there, we live here, we have common values. You mentioned Zionism. We have common goals, and we have to focus on those goals. And when there are differences, usually it's much better to discuss them in closed rooms. It's much more helpful because whatever, and that's what I was beginning to say before, whatever you and I are saying publicly has effect, and it has an outside effect. And that's the way when some Israeli leaders make negative statement, no matter about what issue, it's a wrong move by them. We have a common responsibility, and there is no doubt that people from outside see us as one.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. This has gotten very feisty, which I love. We're at our last question, gentlemen. We've spent the bulk of our time here this evening talking about the American-Jewish relationship with Israel. What about the Israeli relationship with American Jewry? Should Israeli Jews weigh in on American Jewish policy questions and issues? We'll start with you, Yehuda.
Yeah, it's interesting. You said you lament that Israelis don't have stronger knowledge or opinions. I have not found that to be the case about America. I certainly didn't find it to be the case during the Trump era, when Israelis were disproportionately supportive of a president of the United States who American Jews were disproportionately opposed to. And it was very sad to me that from the standpoint of Jewish peoplehood, the very same people who would say something like, a huge percentage of Israelis oppose the Iran deal, and therefore American Jews should take their lesson from what Israelis perceive as their position and hold to this viewpoint. And when I said to my Israeli friends, okay, that's fine, but 78% of American Jews viewed the Trump presidency as a real threat to the endurance of American democracy and the conditions under which American Jews would thrive. Do you as Israelis now, do you hear us? And they said, no, we love Trump because he's great for Israel. So it's simply not the case that Israelis don't weigh in on things that they think America should do or American Jews should do. They just tend to view it through the prism of their own self-interest. And I find that to be very painful. Second thing I'll say is, I know that Minister Chikli is coming here tomorrow to speak at the AJC. For the last 24 hours or so, the minister has been going on an offensive, an attack against an American Jewish organization. It's fair play. The minister in the government of the State of Israel is allowed to criticize an American Jewish organization as he was doing yesterday on TV and then all day today on Twitter. You should say
which organization
it was J Street.
All right.
I know, you don't have to like J Street. That's not the point. The point is, the doors are open. If ministers of the Israeli government are attacking even small minority organizations in the American Jewish community who actually represent quite a few people with the positions that they hold, that means that I don't like it. I don't like the public attack on, I don't think that's the only mechanism by which we as Jews should be engaging in public, but I think it's misleading to suggest that this is somehow a one-directional question of can American Jews hold various positions on Israel, when it's very clearly the case that this is how the Jewish public square is litigating our disputes. I would like it to look better. I would like it to be more menschlichkeit. I would like to not see this kind of punching down from an Israeli minister on a Jewish organization. But in order to fix it, we have to at least acknowledge that those are the conditions under which we're operating.
Okay.
Ariel.
Shikli will be here to defend himself, but it tells you what the challenge is and why, when you have a Jewish organization who is actually supportive of anti-Israel moves, yes, he should get critics from here, from Israel. And that's... It's not a game. It's not a game. When a Jewish organizations give legitimacy to a very anti-Israeli positions, it hurt us. It has an effect here, all right? Now, I'm not sure I would choose Shikli's words, but his direction is completely accurate. Now, going to Trump and all that stuff. Trump was, of course, very popular here. By the way, Bill Clinton was as well very popular here. So it tells you it's not just a political question, it's whether the president is supportive of the state of Israel and is not supportive of it. That's a question, all right? Now Israelis definitely like Trump because he made few historic moves, which are good for the entire Jewish people. I mean, I believe no one here regrets moving the embassy to Yerushalayim. So he did what he did, and he got a lot of support and love here in Israel. It doesn't still mean that we are getting involved in American politics, all right? So we have to differ about that. I want to reply to your question very shortly and to say that in my personal opinion, we should not get involved in issues of other states in general, including America. I know I'm quite aware about that because, as you said, Israelis have their opinions, but at least in my writing, I try to be as objective as I can in a way when American leadership is doing a pro-Israeli move, I support it. When it is a negative one, I don't support it. But maybe I will use this opportunity, because you are Israeli supportive, to tell you, if I may, that since it's a half year now, that an American president, who is Zionist, by the way, who loves Israel, but still, from some reason, didn't invite Israeli Prime Minister to the White House, I think it's time for American Jewish leadership who loves Israel to hint the president it's about time.
Okay. We could go on all night with the two of you. This is incredible, but we do not have time. So we're going to turn to our closing statements. This has been an incredible, incredible debate. Yehuda, since you went second in our opening remarks, why don't you give your closing statement first, and you have 1 minute.
I'll abide by the rules and not respond to everything I want to respond to so far, but I'll just say this. In a speech in the 1950s, Rabbi Soloveitchik, a speech called Kol Dodi Dofek, which is a kind of anchoring text for religious Zionism, especially for American Jews, cites a Talmudic text about Jewish peoplehood in which he says, the fundamental conclusion is that when a Jew in Morocco is hurting, it's the responsibility of the Jew in Paris to feel that pain. We know that story. It's been a big part of Jewish peoplehood as we've understood it throughout the 20th century. And it's an interesting question. Do you feel that pain by trying to feel that pain, or do you feel that pain by working hard throughout your life that it becomes an instinct? We know that side of the story. But right now, the way that the Jewish people are experiencing pain is not only through violence. Sometimes the things that we are doing that are difficult and bringing about pain is through politics. It's through struggles around democracy, and it's around the use of power. When I speak to Israelis, I oftentimes ask them this question: does the fact that American Jews are distancing from Israel bother you? And many of them will say, of course it bothers me. And then I'll say to them, does it obligate you? And that's a harder question to answer. Because to obligate would mean to say, what do I need to do on behalf of Jewish peoplehood that's going to be painful a little bit for me? Whether it's tolerating opinions, or listening to something I don't like, or engaging with the reality that this is what it means to belong to the Jewish people. But I think the Jewish people did remarkable things around Jewish peoplehood in the first phase of the era of the State of Israel, and now it's our opportunity to open up a new horizon.
Ariel.
So it does obligate us. And again, I think the awareness, especially in Israeli leadership and decision-making, public figures and so on, is rising about the responsibility to have stronger ties with Jewish diaspora. And I want to also end by a quote from a rabbi. In this case, it's Rabbi Jonathan, the late Jonathan Sachs, which wrote, "The state of Israel is not just a land. It is not just a state. It is an idea. It is an inspiration. It is a symbol that Jews are the people with a past, but also with a future. It is a Jewish affirmation that we can change the world." Thank you very much.
I want to thank Dr. Yehuda Kurtzer and Ariel Kahana for their insight and their wisdom, not to mention their excellent sparring skills this evening. We live in times when it often seems impossible to have a civil debate. Yehuda and Ariel, today, you not only gave us much to think about as we continue to work to protect and strengthen the relationship between Israel and the Jewish diaspora, but you also modeled what it means to carry out a debate on a topic of such enormous importance to the Jewish people with civility and with purpose, what the rabbis call a machloket l'shem shamayim, an argument for the sake of heaven. The two of you certainly disagreed on plenty this evening, that's for sure, but we know that both of you join AJC, and indeed everyone in this room, in hoping for and working for a strong, supportive, interconnected, and durable Israel-diaspora relationship for the 21st century and beyond. Thank you for joining us for the Great Debate.
תודה רבה.